We often use the term old soul as a compliment, implying a natural wisdom that exists beyond someone's years. However, in the field of psychology, this premature maturity is frequently the fingerprint of early adversity. Research suggests that when a child is forced to process complex adult emotions or environments before they are cognitively ready, their personality reorganizes around survival. You didn't necessarily choose to be wise. You were required to be wise to keep yourself or your family safe. Today, we are examining the 5 rare traits shared by those who learned life's hardest lessons while they were still in the playground. These are not just personality quirks, but deeply ingrained psychological adaptations that continue to dictate how you navigate the world as an adult. By understanding these traits, you can begin to see your history not as a set of scars, but as a blueprint for specialized intelligence. Let's look at the specific psychological signs that you may have traded your childhood for an early education in the reality of human behavior. To understand the traits themselves, we must first analyze the mechanism that creates them, which developmental psychology calls parentification. This occurs when the traditional roles of caregiver and child are inverted, often due to parental illness, addiction, or emotional instability. When a child's environment is unpredictable, the brain cannot afford the luxury of play because it is too busy performing threat assessment. Research shows that chronic environmental stress accelerates the maturation of the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Essentially, your nervous system took a shortcut to adulthood to ensure your survival. You learned that your needs were secondary to the stability of the household, which creates a specific type of hypercompetence. This is why you may feel like you've been 40 years old since you were 8. The psychological cost of this acceleration is a disconnect from your own spontaneous desires, replaced by a rigid sense of duty. Number 1 is hyper-vigilant intuition, which is perhaps the most common trait among early learners. Psychology shows that children raised in unstable environments become master decoders of human behavior. You likely have an uncanny ability to walk into a room and immediately sense the tension, even if everyone is smiling. This is because you learn to read microexpressions and subtle shifts in vocal tone as a way to predict a caregiver's mood. Cognitive psychology calls this social monitoring, where the brain allocates massive resources to external cues to avoid conflict. While this makes you an incredible negotiator or empathetic friend, the real-life consequence is chronic nervous system fatigue. You aren't just perceptive. You are hyperaware because, at one point, not noticing a detail could have meant a significant emotional or physical cost. This high-definition social vision is a powerful tool, but it often prevents you from feeling truly relaxed in the company of others. Your brain is always on, scanning for the slight shift that signals trouble. This hyper-awareness often leads to a second trait, the role of the perpetual social observer. Instead of being a participant in the social games of youth, you likely felt like a scientist studying a foreign species. Psychology suggests this outsider status is a protective mechanism. If you stay objective, you stay safe from the emotional volatility of the group. You understand the why behind people's actions long before your peers do, which can make typical adolescent drama seem exhausting and trivial. The consequence is a persistent sense of alienation, a feeling that you are watching a movie rather than living a life. You possess deep psychological insight, but you struggle to find the off switch that allows for simple, mindless fun. You are often the person others come to for advice because you see the patterns they miss. However, being the wise observer can be lonely, as few people take the time to observe you in return. Number 2 is the self-reliance paradox, more commonly known as hyper-independence. This trait is born from the childhood realization that the adults in your life were either unable or unwilling to meet your needs. When the safety net is missing, the child becomes their own safety net. As an adult, this manifests as a visceral discomfort with asking for help, even when you are clearly overwhelmed. Psychology shows that hyperindependence isn't a sign of strength, but a defense mechanism against the pain of disappointment. You have been conditioned to believe that if I don't do it, it won't get done, or if I rely on them, they will let me down. In professional environments, this makes you a star performer, but in personal relationships, it creates a wall. The real-life consequence is a total inability to experience true intimacy, because intimacy requires the very vulnerability you traded for survival. You are incredibly capable of taking care of others, but you have no idea how to let others take care of you. Number 3 is disproportional accountability, a psychological habit of carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. If you learned life lessons too early, you likely felt responsible for the emotional temperature of your home. You believed that if you were good enough, quiet enough, or helpful enough, you could prevent a parent from drinking, crying, or leaving. In your adult life, this manifests as an obsessive need to fix things that aren't your fault. Research suggests this leads to internalized overresponsibility, where you apologize for the weather, for other people's bad moods, or for taking up space. Psychology calls this a fawn response, a trauma adaptation where you prioritize the needs and emotions of others to ensure your own safety. The real-life consequence is a state of chronic guilt and the inability to distinguish between what you can control and what you cannot. You are exhausted by a list of obligations that you created for yourself, assuming burdens that were never meant to be yours. The fixer eventually breaks because they forgot that they are a human being, not a utility. Number 4 is an unusually high threshold for crisis, often described as an eerie calmness in the face of disaster. While others around you are panicking, you find yourself moving into a cold, logical state of action. Psychology suggests this is because your emergency setting was calibrated at a very young age. When you grow up in a worst-case scenario, your brain becomes desensitized to high-stress environments. Cognitive psychology explains that you develop dissociative competence, where you disconnect from your feelings to focus entirely on the task at hand. This makes you the person everyone wants nearby when things go wrong, but it has a hidden cost. The real-life consequence is that a normal, peaceful life can feel boring or even threatening to your nervous system. You may find yourself unconsciously creating or seeking out chaos just to feel level, because your body only knows how to function at a high RPM. You are a master of the storm, but you have never learned how to sail in calm waters. Being the person who has it all together is an exhausting performance that eventually leads to a specific type of collapse. Psychology refers to this as high-functioning burnout, where you continue to meet every external obligation while feeling completely hollow inside. Because you are so reliable, people stop asking if you're okay. They assume your strength is infinite and effortless. Research suggests that this leads to an identity of utility, where you only feel valuable when you are solving a problem or helping someone else. When the crisis ends, you are often left with a terrifying question: who am I when I'm not being useful? This realization often triggers a period of deep depression or chronic fatigue in your late 20s or 30s. The consequence is a sudden, sharp loss of motivation that feels like laziness, but is actually your soul demanding the rest you never got as a child. Your competence was a survival tool, but it was never meant to be your entire personality. Number 5 is selective vulnerability, the final rare trait of those who grew up too soon. You are likely the most empathetic and non-judgmental person in your circle, capable of holding space for anyone's pain. However, psychology shows that your vulnerability is strictly one-directional. You offer a deep, resonant empathy to others, but you rarely allow anyone to see the machinery of your own internal struggles. Research suggests this is because you view your own needs as a burden to others or a threat to the stability you've worked so hard to maintain. Cognitive psychology calls this emotional compartmentalization, where you store your own feelings in a locked box while you handle the feelings of everyone else. The real-life consequence is a profound sense of loneliness, even when you are surrounded by people who love you. You fear that if you show your true, messy self, you will no longer be useful and therefore no longer lovable. By maintaining this wall, you inadvertently prevent the very connection and relief that you so readily provide to the rest of the world. While the emotional toll is high, there is a cognitive silver lining to early maturity known as heightened fluid intelligence. Psychology shows that navigating unpredictable environments as a child requires constant problem-solving and rapid adaptation. You developed a brain that is exceptionally good at identifying patterns and predicting outcomes under pressure. Research suggests that those who grew up early often possess a scrapper's mentality, a relentless resourcefulness that allows them to thrive in careers that demand quick thinking. However, the consequence is that you may struggle with simple tasks that have no stakes, because your brain only feels fully engaged when there is a problem to solve. You are a high-performance engine that hasn't learned how to idle. This cognitive flexibility is a profound gift, provided you can learn to use it for your own benefit, not just for survival. The path to healing for those who grew up too fast involves a process psychology calls reparenting. It begins with the realization that your maturity wasn't just your personality, it was a suit of armor you were forced to wear. You have to learn how to be young again, which means allowing yourself to be irresponsible, to make mistakes, and to ask for help without shame. Research into post-traumatic growth suggests that when we acknowledge the loss of our childhood, we can finally stop performing for our survival. This isn't about ignoring your wisdom, but about making that wisdom optional rather than mandatory. You are allowed to put down the heavy weights you've been carrying since you were a child. If you recognize yourself in these 5 traits, know that you are part of a resilient group of individuals who survived by adapting. Your hypervigilance, independence, and accountability were the tools that got you here, but they don't have to be the tools that take you forward. Psychology reminds us that the brain is plastic. You can rewire your need for crisis into a capacity for deep, peaceful connection. The wisdom you earned too early is now your own. It no longer belongs to the people who failed to protect you. Take a moment today to acknowledge the child you were and the adult you had to become. You've done enough, you've been strong enough. Now you are allowed to just be. Thank you for watching. If this perspective resonated with you, consider exploring our other videos on trauma recovery and the path to authentic self-discovery.